Happy Friday, Hokie Nation, and welcome back to another video edition of the Friday Q&A here for Tech Sideline. As always, I'm Robert Bateman, joined alongside by now the second most important bald man in Blacksburg, Chris Coleman, and behind the scenes, as always, is Nick Brown. In case you've been living under a rock, James Franklin is now the head coach of Virginia Tech. Men's and women's basketball are still 5-0 as they get ready for their Thanksgiving tournaments, and Blacksburg in general is on the up and up. So before we get into it, make sure to drop any of your dying questions down in the comment section below to be featured on future episodes of the TSL Q&A. And as always, check out everything in our YouTube page, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We've loaded you full of content this week with James Franklin's hiring, so be sure to check out everything we got for you there. You ready to go?
Well, let's go.
All right, so our first question comes from Eric Fisher, 667, who asked, let's say conference realignment comes up again soon. Does the Franklin hire tip the scales to make us more attractive commodity to one of the P2s?
It doesn't hurt, but it's still going to come down to television revenue, the attractiveness of the overall product, winning games, and things like that. So Franklin can help directly by winning as many football games as possible. I think we're a few years off from any sort of expansion, and I'm not even sure it's going to be an expansion per se. It would be more like realignment. I don't know if these conferences can really get any bigger. I mean, I keep saying that, and they keep getting bigger, but it just doesn't make sense for them to get any bigger. There's more realignment coming. I just don't know what it's going to look like, but I think it'll coincide with some of those TV contracts being up for renewal around 2030, 2031, something like that.
Do you see a world where we just end up getting like a league table almost, where there's like 30 teams in a conference and they just pick half the teams in the conference that they play that year?
Then I think if they did that, then they might as well just split it out into two divisions. But even then, you couldn't play everybody in your own division if it's 15 in each division, right? So, I think if you have an 18-team conference, then 9-team divisions are the way to go, and then you play an 8-game conference schedule. That's just me. That seems fairly even and fairly balanced, but they don't seem interested in balance these days.
Well, everything is about the money, but Vatek Cow Patty wondered what type of offense will Franklin run. He seems to be pursuing pocket passers, but Rain at ODU runs a read option offense with a running QB.
Yeah, it seems recently Penn State has recruited a lot of pocket passers. Their quarterback this year was a big pocket passer. You can go back to Christian Hackenberg. He was a big pocket passer. They had Trace McSorley, who was a good runner and a good scrambler.
Throw it on a dime.
Yeah, exactly. But, he seems to be the exception to the rule. And, they're recruiting the kid out of California now who's a big pocket passer. And, he was originally committed to Penn State. Ronnie at Old Dominion seems a little more balanced. He was Penn State's offensive coordinator. So he's dealt with big pocket passers before, but he's also, has Colton Joseph out there where they run a lot of option, and it's a Georgia Tech type of offense. So I think if it happened to be Ronnie, if they could pull him from ODU, I think he didn't have that much longer on his contract, and Tech could probably double his salary. If they were to get him, I think maybe he strikes the right balance. He's a guy who has coached both types of quarterbacks and has been able to tweak his system for the type of quarterback he has. Now, he's not ODU's offensive coordinator. They've got their own offensive coordinator, of course, but generally speaking, yes, big pocket passers have been the way to go for James Franklin, which means Virginia Tech, they've got to rebuild that offensive line and make sure their running backs are good, because they're going to need a strong running game, because they're not going to have a quarterback most likely who's going to be breaking off like Kyron Drones yardage in the read option game.
Well, speaking of strength, St. Andrew just wants to know your thoughts on Jarrett Ferguson and the future of the strengths. And I think it did. Wow, my apologies. The strength and conditioning room.
Yeah, I think Ferguson is a really good choice, a really good option. Now, Franklin has his own strength guy, Chuck Losey, who is considered to be really, really good. He's been with Franklin since his Vanderbilt days. He was assistant strength and conditioning coach under Dwight Galt III, the father of Virginia Tech's former strength coach. And when Galt III retired, Losey took over as their head guy, and he's considered to be really good. It wouldn't surprise me if Franklin brought his guy with him, but if he retained Ferguson, it wouldn't shock me also. I'd love to have both. Would love to see if they could work together. I wouldn't see Losey taking a demotion. So if they were to work together, I think he would be the number one guy with Ferguson number two maybe. But I also think Ferguson is the number one guy in his own right. But I don't know that Ferguson's interested in going somewhere else. For a while there, he wasn't even in strength and conditioning. He was just talked into getting back into it. Would love to have both, but I don't know if that'll happen or not.
Well, some big money sure to be handed out with some new hires on the way. And luckily, Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company. Manage your money with ease. First Bank and Trust Company's industry-leading digital banking experience provides you with all the essential tools to manage your full banking relationship from one convenient platform. Access digital banking through the online banking login on desktop and tablet devices or on the go through the First Bank and Trust Company mobile banking app. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Choose First Bank and Trust Company with over 30 locations in Virginia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. So our last question comes from VT Griff09, who said, Coach Franklin said they were going to be aggressive in the portal this cycle. What positions do you prioritize, and how many of each player's position group do you think should be upgraded or brought in for competition?
Yeah, I don't know about the numbers yet because you never know who you're going to lose. Like if you lose a key player that you wanted to retain, then obviously the numbers go up. So it's hard to say, but literally every single position is on the table. I think Virginia Tech probably, assuming they keep Marcellus Hawkins, would only need to take one running back. But for the other positions, like if you could get 2 offensive linemen, that'd be great. You're going to have to rebuild the defensive tackle room. I mean, you've got 2 good players coming back there, but you're going to need 2 or 3 more. You have work to do at defensive end. You have work to do at linebacker. You have work to do. You'll have work to do at tight end. You'll have work to do at quarterback, obviously. So this is going to be one of those years where you look at the portal and you just say, yeah, we have an opening, at least one opening at every single position on the field. Franklin wants to build it from the high school level, of course, and he will. But this first year is going to be portal heavy because you have to make yourself competitive. You have to bridge that gap as your younger players develop strength and learn the system and get ready to play. You got to improve the talent level with the young players, but they're not going to be ready right away. So you're going to be portal heavy early in his tenure. And then hopefully year 3 and beyond, you're not so portal heavy and you're just sort of promoting from within. That's the idea. That's pretty much what they've done at Penn State. They fill a spot when they need to in the portal, but they develop from within. Like Florida State, I think, is probably too portal heavy. Clemson doesn't go the portal route enough. I think Penn State under Franklin, they've probably found the right balance there, in my opinion, and I expect him to bring that same model to Virginia Tech.
So are there any players that you want to see Virginia Tech retain or build around?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hawkins, like I said. I think you look at a couple of true freshmen on defense that are playing, that have done a good job this year for their age. Noah Chambers, Sheldon Robinson. You could probably throw Brennan Johnson in there. He hadn't played quite as much as those other guys. Kamari Copeland's got another year. Emmett Laws has a very good future, in my opinion. You look at a couple freshmen on the offensive line. Altuner's done a good job at center considering his age. Aiden Lynch is a guy who Penn State recruited. And Penn State recruited Altuner also. Both those guys took multiple visits to Penn State. So if they were to bring their offensive line coach, you'd see those guys get major opportunities. And they're already getting opportunities because they're already both starting. But yes, I mean, there's some good building blocks on this roster, and I don't want to leave anybody out. JoJo Krim's done a nice job when he's been in there, although I think he's been injured recently. There's good players on this team. There's just not quite enough of them.
It's a pretty weird dynamic having the interim for 2 more weeks. Well, James Franklin's already here in Blacksburg. How much control and say does he have on the roster right now? Like, is he going to be picking out some guys that he might want for next year to get more minutes this weekend?
I don't think so. I don't think he's got time to even evaluate that. I think he's been watching Virginia Tech play, I'm sure. So he's got a good idea of the personnel and things like that. And I'm sure he'll be watching some practices to get a better idea. But he still doesn't have as much of an idea about the personnel as Philip Montgomery. And, other coaches, they're not going to step on other coaches' toes. He's going to sit back and say, look, you do whatever you feel like you have to do to try and win these last 2 football games. He's got plenty of time to evaluate. And like I said, he'll see these guys in practice as well.
Well, that will do it for us on this week's edition of the Friday Q&A. As always, be sure to check out all of our socials at Tech Sideline on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also, check out the YouTube page. We got Buy or Sell up from yesterday, the podcast, a couple podcasts this week with the emergency pod as well for James Franklin, and just content all across the board for you. So, once again, a big thank you to my partner, Chris Coleman, as always, and Nick Brown behind the scenes. I'm Robert Bateman, and we'll see you guys next week on the Friday Q&A.